Happy Monday, Year 5. Okie dokie. So we are back with a history pre-recorded lesson. Now, I know in 5W we're pretty good at our presentation. We're still writing down today's date, learn objective, context, and we're historians. So see if we can keep this up, please. It keeps a good routine and knowing that we are homeschooling at the moment. So you are at home, but it is still schooling. So as always, we've got a recap quiz. These are 3 questions based on last lesson. So work your way through this. So I'm just going to say as well, I'm going to try and get this a little bit shorter because I do believe it was about 20 minutes last week and that is quite long. So I'm going to say pause here or have a think about this, and then I'm not going to pause for too long. I'm going to carry on. So please do pause the video as and when you need. So recap quiz, roughly when did the Romans invade Britain? Well, I say roughly because you might not know exactly at the moment, but put down an answer for that. Can you remember something from last lesson? Remember, for these you can look back at the work you've previously done and get the answers if you wish. We're not expecting you to know them off the top of your head, but if you have a good go first. Who invaded Britain first, the Romans or the Vikings? And what does emigration mean? The last one being a little bit harder. So that's your little recap quiz. So pause it here if you need a little bit more time to go through those, which I expect some of you do. And we're going to be moving on. So today's lesson. We're still looking at British settlements by Romans, Saxons, Vikings and Celts. But our context today is specifically that Roman and Viking travel. So let's get into it. So why would you want to migrate? So if we're traveling somewhere, we spoke about what migration was last week. I want to talk about why we might want to migrate. So this is your first little task. Have a think about why you might want to move elsewhere. On a sheet of paper, write your notes down. So I've put an example one down. You might want to migrate elsewhere due to the weather. The weather might be more desirable elsewhere. Desirable, it might be colder because you enjoy the cold, it might be hotter because you enjoy the sun. So please do pause here, see if you can get 2 or 3 down here, because on the next slide you've got a task and this will help. So pause the video, have a little go at that. Perfect, so hopefully you've got some good ideas there of why you might want to migrate. Your second task, push and pull factors of migration. So forced migration, when you might be forced to move, and a voluntary migration could be when there's a pull factor. So it might be that weather, that the weather's better elsewhere and that's pulling you to move over there. So we're now going to look at push and pull factors or forced and voluntary migration. So there's loads of statements down below. Better climate, wars causing refugees, racial discrimination, better healthcare and education, improved prospects, better housing, poverty or poor farmland, employment with higher wages or starvation. What I want you to do is to pick through some of these, and I want you to just have a little think. Is this a push factor? Is it you being forced out of your the place you live? Are you being forced to migrate elsewhere? Or is it a pull factor? Okay, so we'll have a little go together. Better climate. Better climate would definitely be a pull. It's pulling you in to this new place. So better climate would go into a voluntary migration. So you're happy to move. Wars causing refugees. That's definitely a forced migration. That's a push factor. Because of the wars around you or where you're living, that's pushing you out of that place and you're going to maybe go and move elsewhere. We've got overpopulation. Now, overpopulation would not be a pull factor because it means it's a very crowded area. So you wouldn't want to go and live there. So it would be a forced migration. It'd be a push factor to get you to move elsewhere. Where that elsewhere is, we don't know at the minute. We could think about better lifestyle. If there's a better lifestyle elsewhere, that would then be a pull factor, making you want to go and live elsewhere. Okay, so it'll be voluntary migration. So have a little look through these. We're not asking you to necessarily write these down. I want you to just go through them, have a really good think. Is this pushing me out of where I'm living, or is it pulling me to move elsewhere? Okay, good stuff. Now, into the crux of the work. So the Romans. The Romans were traditionally not seafaring people, meaning they didn't really build many boats, or they weren't traditionally known for their sea antics. They're mostly land-based people who learnt to build military and merchant ships from the people they conquered. So they learnt off of other people. And they sailing the seas was often considered un-Roman, and even the Roman navy never acquired a status of a fully autonomous branch of the Roman military. So here, obviously, we have the Navy, we have the Air Force, and we have the Army, as well as Marines, etc. as well, forming the British military. Romans never really did have that separate Navy element to it. So they were basically kept the Roman Empire as army people more than seafaring people. So the Romans were from Italy, and obviously up at the top we can see England in pink. Quite a long way to go if we're going by boat, which is obviously going to be their means of transport. So the Romans were from Italy, like we just said, so they had a long way to travel before reaching England. However, the Roman Empire and their armies were incredibly powerful, and they invaded some countries too. So the Roman Empire covered much of Europe, North Africa and the Middle East. So this is showing you a bit of a map of Europe, and all in pink is the Roman Empire, or where they have conquered. So right at the bottom, if you can see, you can just about make out Italy, and they've moved elsewhere. So what we would know as modern day France, they would have conquered modern day France as well. So they had a very powerful army, and they did spread themselves around. So where do you think the majority of the Roman ships set sail from? So just at the bottom of the screen there, you can see Italy. Do you think they set sail from Italy and went all the way around to get to England, or what we know as England? Or where do you think they might have set sail from? So I want you to just pause if you need to take another moment and just think about this. So, as the Romans landed in the southeast of England, it's safe to say that the majority of their ships would have set sail from what we know as today modern France, so northern France. So they would have set sail from around this point here, making it the shortest distance to cross in terms of what is the channel that we know is now. And they landed in and around Kent. Now, you can't quite see the little map behind me, but you can just about make out Dover above my head. It's apparently said that when Caesar came over, he was looking to land in Dover, being a nice short crossing. However, as we know, the White Cliffs of Dover extremely tall. So when they were looking to dock, there were a lot of Britons actually who spotted all the ships. Obviously, if they're bringing over numerous armies or different regiments and armies, then the Britons were all on like the cliffs areas, so they had an advantage to stop the Romans sort of invading, because they had that height element. They could throw things down, spears, etc., and they could hurt obviously the Roman landing. So it's said that apparently he carried on going up towards Walmer. He didn't go that far, and he docked elsewhere, which was going to be a little bit easier for them, so it wasn't quite as steep. However, again, I keep saying however, I think it's fair to say that the Britons would have followed, so it would not have been an easy invasion at all. Obviously, we know that it's taken him 3 attempts, or it took the Romans 3 attempts. On the first attempt, they were there, so the Brits were there. They were there to stop. Okay, so they were looking for a nice short crossing here. Okay, so if we're looking at their ships, warships are built to be lightweight, very fast and manoeuvrable. Because they were so lightweight, they often lay crippled on the surface and didn't sink. So after a naval battle, they could be towed back to shore, or different bits could be saved and reused again if needed. So warships also had to be able to go near the coast, which was the reason why they were flat. They were quite shallow underneath, so they didn't get stuck quite far out. They could come right up to shore, or at least closer to shore. Now, they have a heavy spike, usually made of bronze, that was used to pierce the holes or break the oars of enemy ships. Now, on the next slide, I'm going to show you a ship. I want to see if you can spot that spike. And they did use both wind and human power, and they had a square sail and a large number of oars on each side. So we're going to have to take a closer look now. So I'm not going to be able to pronounce this right, I know I'm not. So the Trimé was a dominant warship from the 7th to the 4th century BC. Had 3 rows of rowers at the top, middle and the lower of each row. So you might be able to just about make that out on the picture. Well, it's obviously not a picture, it's a drawing. 50 rows on each row, so they were quite big warships as well. Can you spot that heavy section at the front, which they could have been used to break the oars of other boats, or maybe even to ram into boats? Obviously, I don't think they would have necessarily sunk boats, but it could have caused different problems. So the Romans and their travels. So there were a few passenger ships in the first century Rome. Those willing to travel by ship had to board merchant ships. Merchant ships were much larger, they were slower, and they were less maneuverable than the warships. Most of the times, passengers would have to bring their own food supplies, covers, and sleep on the deck. Okay, so sometimes there would be hundreds of people all on the deck just because of the slight migration of people. That's very, very different to if you've been on a cruise liner or a ship. Nowadays, obviously, we all tend to go inside, and there might be a food hall, there might be things to do or places to eat, etc. So they had none of the luxuries that we have today. Some Roman ships, though, did have cabins usually located at the stern that could accommodate only the most wealthy Romans. So it was only the people with money that would necessarily maybe be able to stay inside where it might have been slightly warmer. And this is a little model of what one may have looked like. Okay, so a little bit about Romans there. Now we're going to move on to Vikings and their travel as well. So the Vikings were predominantly from Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. So if you have a look on the map, we've got Norway, Sweden, and Denmark all to the east and basically northeast of England. And they came to Britain in their longboats on longships. So there is a little diagram of a longship there. Looks smaller than the Roman boats, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they were. So Viking longships. Now this little clip on the right hand side, we're not going to play it, but I will link that onto the website. So if you go back onto the website, you'll be able to see that. But what were the Viking ships like? So the Vikings built fast dragon ships, and known to be dragons, we'll get to that in a moment, and longships for raiding and war. But they also did have slower passenger and cargo ships called Nors, and they built smaller boats too for fishing or short trips. A ship carried everything needed at sea, just like the Romans as well. Drinking water, dried meat to eat, tools, weapons, furs to keep warm, etc. And Viking longships could sail in shallow water, so they could travel up rivers as well as across sea. In a raid, a ship could be hauled onto the beach, so very similar there to Roman ships, so they were quite shallow. They could be moved onto or near the beach, when in the sea. Then the Vikings could jump out and start fighting, make a quick getaway if they were chased or needed. So there are various similarities here in how their ships would have been built. And again, they have their predominant warships, and then there may be cargo carrying or migration of people ships. Okay. So the Viking longships, the Vikings' secret weapon. Now, the Vikings loved the sea and they were master sailors, so unlike the Romans. This gave them the opportunity to travel far and wide. The Vikings had two main ships. They had the Nar, which is in the bottom left-hand corner. It's a little picture again. Obviously, we're presuming it would have been a lot bigger, which was sturdy and strong for moving cargo, animals, and also people. So that's something to think about. Are there similarities here between different types of ships between the Romans and the Vikings? There definitely are. So, and their longship, which was a fast, lightweight, and it was easy to move for raiding and battling. So the Viking boats were flexible, which meant they could bounce about on the waves and in storms. They were made of curved, overlapping wooden planks joined together with iron fastenings. So they were extremely well made, and they were very, very secure and dense. So these planks were so strong that the sides of the boat only needed to be roughly 2 or 3 centimeters thick. So that keeps it really nice and lightweight, but makes them extremely strong and sturdy as well. Now, Vikings and their travel to Britain. Now, look at your maps in front of you. So on the screen, why do you think the majority of Viking ships landed to the east and the northwest of Britain? So if you have a look on the blue map, you can see, I'll just bring one with my pen. Over here, we can see where some Vikings landed. And there's one up here as well. There are some map dotted elsewhere. And on the other map, just behind my head, you can see in purple where they came to reside as well. So would they have landed here? So why do you think it's the north west of Britain and also in the east? Why do we think? I deliberately haven't shown you the map we had up earlier. That's coming up in a moment. Let's have a little think. Why? Okay, So Vikings then travelled to Britain here, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. If what we said that where the predominant number of Vikings originated from. So if we look at from Denmark to England, we're probably looking that they are going to be landing in a nice shortest route as possible into the east of England, which here is, you know, around the Kent area as well, and various different sides there. Norway, if we're thinking they could have maybe come around the top here, or in here, or down here. Same with Sweden. Sweden would have probably been taking more of this middle line. So they're predominantly coming over from the east, or maybe even working their way around to the northwest as well. Okay. So that was just a bit about some boats and Romans and Vikings and how they might have travelled, etc. And I do realise that I've tried to keep it shorter, but it's still going over 15 minutes. I'll be nice and quick here. Your individual task, they build on from each other. So if you're going to just do hot and spicy, have a look at the next step in mega hot, because it might only take you an extra 10 minutes and you might really enjoy it. So hot and spicy on your map. So this is all on the website as well, if you can get one. Colour in the countries that the Romans travelled from and draw arrows to indicate the journey they took. Then again, I want you to repeat this for Vikings using different colours. Now, you may not be able to do hot and spicy. If you don't have a printer at home, not a problem. And you need to look at what you can do from here. So mega hot, you still have that first section of the hot and spicy work that you need to do. Now, obviously, if you don't have a printer, don't worry. Your next step is to explain 2 similarities and 2 differences between the Roman transport and the Viking transport. Now, please use full sentences. Don't just have a 4-word answer here. That's not what we're after. You wouldn't answer this question here in 5 minutes in class. You would spend a little bit longer on it. 2 similarities and 2 differences. Make sure they're really good. Obviously, if you want to do more, that's brilliant. Then for IE nuts, we build on. The next section is down here. It says explain which boat you would have preferred. I think it means to travel. I can't remember what I put down because obviously my head's in the way. Traveling and why. Okay, so there are lots of boats listed. So this is obviously going to be on YouTube, so you can just bring it back up, pause it, really do think about how to answer these. So if you can't do the map, I suggest you can probably do the similarities, differences, and explain which boat you'd prefer to be in and why. Remember to use a good hour. This is really important, remember. So, good stuff. Pause, go back, flick through, see which other slides you want to use. Do spend quite a good chunk of can't get my words out. Do spend a good chunk of time on this work, please. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you can create here. Obviously, just because I've done the input doesn't mean you need to send all of your history work to me. You still need to send your history work to your teacher. Thank you very much. Have a fantastic Monday, and I will see you soon.